You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we've been watching Florida very closely, where Donald Trump's dismissal of his case by Judge Cannon has been pushed to the 11th Circuit. Now, Jack Smith is trying to get this case reinstated back to the trial court in Florida, but he's now asked for a 30-day extension, which is, this is what Donald Trump does. These are the dilatory tactics that he engages in. But Jack Smith very curiously decided not to oppose Donald Trump's request for an extension. Why did he do this?
Yeah, good question, Brian. And the most important word in the entire filing by Trump's lawyers is the word unopposed. I raised an eyebrow because Jack Smith has made it clear he wants to push things as fast as they can reasonably be pushed. At least that was true in the run-up to the election, when there was at least the prospect of one of Donald Trump's federal criminal cases going to trial before the November election. We all know that that is not a possibility anymore. So I think there are two reasons Jack Smith opted not to oppose this request by Trump for a 30-day extension to file their brief in the Florida Documents case. One, I think, stating the obvious, this case will be pushed well beyond the November election. I mean, this case is going to have to be fully briefed and argued before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals will then take some time to resolve it. Assuming they reinstate it, and I believe they will on the law, it will then get sent back to the trial court. Whether Judge Cannon or a new judge is an open question. Then it gets put back on the trial track. Brian, we are probably now approaching spring of 2025 with just those tasks that I've laid out. So I don't think Jack Smith loses a whole lot by not opposing a request for just a 30-day extension for Trump to file his brief. But I actually think the more important reason is Jack Smith has an enormous court filing coming up in federal court in Washington, D.C., and it's due on September 26th. That is going to be the brief, the pleading that contains all of the information and evidence about all of Donald Trump's crimes and his conduct and his statements, running up to and on January 6th, when he tried to overturn the results of a presidential election. Jack Smith said to the court, "Judge, I will be attaching grand jury transcripts, interview transcripts, even outside the grand jury, FBI 302 forms, which are very lengthy, detailed documents that set out what the FBI talked with witnesses about." So this is probably a project that Jack Smith and his entire team has been working on night and day since Judge Chutkan set the September 26th filing deadline for Jack Smith. And I have to believe that, this is going to give them a little bit of a 30-day reprieve in the Florida case that they're prosecuting against Donald Trump or trying to get reinstated, so they can focus on doing everything they need to do to get that filing in on September 26th.
So hold on. So we've got Jack Smith and his team working night and day for this big mini trial that's happening in D.C. And at the same time, they would have had to divert resources and staff away from that to go deal with this Florida motion that isn't going to matter anyway, because it's not like that case is going to be tried before the election. So it's really 6 of one, half dozen of the other in terms of when this thing actually goes. And Donald Trump just basically offered him a clear runway to then bring all of his resources back to the D.C. case against him in an effort to just delay the Florida prosecution where it makes no difference.
Brian, nobody has ever accused Donald Trump or his lawyers of being tactical thinkers. They are clearly not. But, if we turn to what Donald Trump's lawyers put in the substance of his request for this 30-day extension, I'm not going to say it's laughable, but basically they said, to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, our defendant is being prosecuted in so many places at the same time that we're really spread thin, Judge, and we're going to need some more time. I mean, it's not exactly a rousing defense of your legal position when your client is such a criminal that all of his lawyers have to defend him in 4 different prosecutions across the eastern seaboard. Yeah, but that's what they put as their reason for needing more time. Gosh, Judge, he's got the civil case in New York that's in federal court. That's the E. Jean Carroll verdict that's up on appeal. He's got, the D.C. criminal case. I don't think they mentioned the New York criminal case in which he's been convicted 34 times over of felonies, and he's pending sentencing. But it's not much of an excuse that, your guy's criminal dance card is just so dang full that we need another 30 days.
So talk to me about the motion that was actually filed that we're speaking about here in Florida, because I know a lot of people are wondering what we're looking at in terms of getting this thing back on the trial track after Judge Cannon's completely baseless dismissal.
Yeah, about a month ago now, Jack Smith filed a very powerful, compelling, and all-encompassing brief in support of his argument, and it's a sound argument, that Judge Cannon abused her discretion. She made the wrong decision by throwing the case out. Indeed, all of the prevailing case law, the precedent up to and including the Supreme Court, cuts against what Judge Cannon did. And they even go far beyond the implications for this one case. They actually say in there that if you, 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, say Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, doesn't have the authority to make any number of appointments, not just special counsel, it is going to turn the executive branch on its head because it implicates lots and lots of other appointments across the executive branch. I mean, that's just one of the many arguments that they make. And, I do think ultimately the 11th Circuit is very likely to reverse Judge Cannon and do so unanimously. It's before a 3-judge panel. Because if we look back to last time Judge Cannon was appealed, in a case involving Donald Trump, when she tried to put a stop to the DOJ and the FBI investigating the classified documents that they had seized pursuant to a search warrant from Mar-a-Lago. Judge Cannon tried to put a stop to it. A 3-judge panel of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously reversed her and said she abused her discretion. They said no judge has a right to interfere in an ongoing federal investigation. And the 3 judges that were on that panel, all 3 were appointed by Republican presidents, 2 appointed by Donald Trump. So I think we're going to see a repeat of what happened last time a 3-judge panel, judged whether Judge Cannon abused her discretion or did the right thing. And I think they're going to reverse her.
Glenn, if we do see 2 unanimous reversals by a circuit court that is by no means liberal, it raises the obvious question. I know the question that everybody out watching is wondering, which is how the hell do you get this corrupt judge off the bench?
I don't know about off the bench, but at this point I would settle for off the case. And I actually think if the 11th Circuit, this will actually be the 3rd time. They found she abused her discretion twice previously when she was doing favors for Donald Trump after the documents had been seized from Mar-a-Lago. This will be, 3 strikes and you're out. I'm going to be keenly interested in reading the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals opinion when it comes out for 2 things. 1, do they reverse Judge Cannon? I suspect they will. And 2, do they sua sponte, on their own, without even being asked by Jack Smith, yank her from the case and have it reassigned to a fair, independent, and impartial judge down in that federal district in Florida? I think there's a good chance that they do it. But even if they don't, Brian, after her 3rd strike of being reversed, I have a feeling the time may finally be right for Jack Smith to make the motion to have her removed from the case.
I mean, if he doesn't, he's basically asking to continue doing all of this work for a guaranteed loss. I mean, he's basically daring her to dismiss this case on any other charge. We know she's going to do it. She's already proven herself time and time again, working hand in glove with the defense. And so for him not to do this would kind of defy any logic whatsoever. He's basically signing up for a losing case.
I agree. And if ever there was sort of truth to the old adage, if you give somebody enough rope, I think he has given her so much rope that if she's reversed a 3rd time, he must, think long and hard about whether the time will be right to file the motion to have her removed, and I think it will be.
Now, all of that said, this is us putting the cart a little bit before the horse here, because before it even gets anywhere near the trial track again, whether it's with Judge Cannon or hopefully a different judge, this thing is going to be instantly appealed by either the defense or the prosecution up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Is that right?
It is, and that's another good reason, Jack Smith. Listen, I will tell you, as a former career prosecutor, anytime I could not oppose something my, brother or sister defense counsel on the other side of the bar proposed, if I could do the civil, cordial, professional thing, I would do it, unless I thought it would do real damage to my client's position. And as Kamala Harris said about her career in public service, I had one client and one client only, the people, my entire professional career. As long as I wasn't doing damage to the people's position in a prosecution, I would agree to a continuance all day, every day, because that builds goodwill with judges, and you like to do that where you can.
Right. And here, again, because we know that we're not racing against the clock to get this case up and running before the election, this doesn't seem like a battle, like a hill that it's really worth dying on for Jack Smith when there are going to be plenty of other motions that are worth fighting, and we've already seen that there have been, and Jack Smith has been willing to fight them.
Yeah, I agree. And just as you pointed out, Brian, one way or another, it's going up to the Supreme Court. So what is another 30 days at this point?
Right. Okay, well, we will, of course, stay on top of what's happening in Florida, where things do seem to be moving relatively quickly, and hopefully we get an answer soon as to what's going to happen next, whether it's going to get kicked back to the trial court, what's going to happen in terms of an appeal to the Supreme Court. So a lot of news still upcoming with this Florida classified documents prosecution. For those watching right now, if you want to stay on top of this, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. That's the best way to support the work that we do. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.